Well, for those of you in North and South America, good morning. For those of you joining from Europe or Africa, good afternoon. And those of you in Asia and Oceania, this is a very late night. Thank you for staying up to be here this evening. I'm Daryl Ireland, the Associate Director of the Center for Global Christianity and Mission at Boston University, the institution behind the creation and maintenance of the China Historical Christian Database. It has been a privilege to be part of this project and to work with so many of you, actually, to make it a reality. We are excited today to release the second version of the CHCD. Since last summer, we have had 60 students and scholars working together to collect and clean more data on Christianity in China. And in anticipation of this new release, we've invested in major technical upgrades, which you will hear about shortly. The project to map Christianity in China, both geographically and through social network maps, is bigger than any one of us or any single institution. To create the largest data set on Christianity in China ever assembled has required a collaborative venture, and we are very grateful for the many ways that you and others have made this project possible. Today, the focus will be on the features of this new version of the CHCD. And to help walk us through them, I'm inviting Dr. Alex Mayfield of Asbury University and Greta Rauch, the CHCD project manager, to lead us through the upgrades that will now be available to you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to begin already to type them into the chat function, or you can save those questions to the end when we will have a chance to speak with our digital creators. Once again, welcome to the launch of the CHCD 2.0. I hope your imaginations are energized. Alex and Greta?
Great, thanks, Daryl. And thank you all for being here. Excited to be able to walk us through some of the updates and exciting things that we are releasing, but also in the future as well, things upcoming. So what we'll do today is we're going to do a quick little project overview for those who maybe aren't as familiar with the CHCD, just a really quick explainer of what we're doing here if it's your first time. And then Greta is going to walk us through some data updates. And I will then walk us through a kind of look at some of the new features of the front end that kind of really focus on usability and shareability. And then we'll talk a little bit briefly and sum up with things to look forward to that our team is continuing to work on. So just for those who are maybe not as familiar with it, the CHCD is a project really that focuses on quantifying and visualizing Christianity in modern China, so 1515 to 1950. And we record known people, institutions, organizations, events, and we should say, as Greta will talk about, also now publications. So we are really focusing on a way to bring lots of different sorts of data together from different sources, and to make it accessible to people. You know, the main heart of the project is a database, a relational and geographic graph database. And that is the heart of it. That's the data is what makes it valuable. However, a big goal of the project is also a front-end user interface that we don't just want to create a CSV file that we can then release and people who know what they're doing with a bunch of big data sets can then use, but we wanted to make it useful for students and researchers who are not as used to large data sets. So we have partnered all along the way with an army of undergrad and graduate students who have made this possible, and partners from around the world. So we are just it's thankful. I'm thankful to be part of this team who has brought together resources which are really just unimaginable. At least they were to me. So for the database, as you'll see, there's a lot of ways that you can use it, from basic research and teaching, getting students on there and creating custom maps and searching for individuals. But it's also, as a database, useful for all kinds of newer forms of analysis, network analysis, spatial analysis, and even longitudinal and comparative studies. We have a database full of Protestants and Catholics and Orthodox. So bringing together the various streams of Christianity in a way that allows you to actually study them together, which is not often the case, unfortunately, with the study of Christianity in China and around the world. So That is the project. That's kind of the heart of it. You'll see it in action as we go further on. But I'd love to then pass this over now to Greta, who's going to talk us through what have we added, the data updates and things that we've done since 1.0. And then I'll be back. All right, so Greta.
Okay, it's wonderful to be with you all today. So I'm going to talk about the data updates in version 2 of the CHCD. So the first big update over here on the right, you'll see our data schema. So this is a visualization of what the data looks like, what kinds of data we record, and how the different types of data are recorded, how they relate to each other. And we have added 2 new node types, publications and general areas. Publications you'll see in red in that schema, and general areas you'll see in purple. And so publications, the purpose of this data type is to capture the many publications produced by Christians. And it's designed to be pretty flexible and hierarchical so that we can record things like a book to multiple issues of a journal or a periodical, and even potentially recording things like a poster or other types of visual content as well. So publications is a new addition to the database, and the first set of data that this node captures is Christian periodicals. And we'll talk a little bit more in the next couple of slides about what these periodicals are. The next node type that we've added is general areas. So in the previous, our database has a pretty controlled geography system. So we don't allow people to have a direct relationship to a geographical place. And there are a lot of reasons for this. To put it simply, it's to help reduce redundant data and to help make sure that our data is easy to maintain. So people receive an association with a location through being connected to either an institution or an event. Problem arises when we know that a person was in a specific location in China, but we don't know what institution they were affiliated with or what event they were affiliated with. So previously we had these placeholder institutions, which were a workaround to kind of create a filler institution to associate the person with. But this caused some confusion because it was unclear that these institutions were kind of fake institutions. And so we've added a general area node to use when we know a person is located in China, but we don't know what institution they're affiliated with. That's the purpose of our general area node. So now I want to talk about the actual data that we've added to the database. So we, in addition to the data that's already present, we now have data about the Society of the Divine Word and the Missionary Sisters, Servants of the Holy Spirit Sisters. And this data is thanks to our colleagues at Monumenta Syrica, who consulted over 30 sources to compile this data. You'll see on the right a list of the new sources that we've incorporated. It doesn't include all of the sources from Monumenta Syrica because that list would not fit on this slide. So these are kind of the most important sources that they looked at. We also have additional coverage on the faculty at Fujian University, which is largely SVD and SSPS congregation members. And then we have data on religious presses. And that majorly comes from Lilienthal's book, The Religious Periodical Press. And that covers both Protestant and Catholic presses. So the new release includes over 800 new individuals, almost 1,000 more institutions, 500 new organizations, and then over 4,000 new relationships between people, and over 8,000 relationships between people and other things like institutions, corporations, or publications. We've also added 67 new geographical locations, and these are mostly villages. So now I want to talk about the data cleaning that we've done. So we've cleaned over 300 geographic nodes that had incorrect locations. And this largely came from the confusion of a place having the same Romanized English name, but different Chinese character names. So we went through all of our geography and identified locations with the same English name that had kind of the same geographic coordinates. So we've cleaned up our geography so that it is, even more reliable than it was in our first release. We've also identified a bunch of people in the database whose information is somewhat suspicious. And these are things like the example on the right that you'll see where we have Catherine Mary Andrews from the United States and Catherine M. Andrews. And when you look at the data, you can become confident that these two people are actually the same person. So that's one type of problematic node, a duplicate. The other type of problematic node might be if you have somebody who is a Dominican one year and then the next year they're a Pentecostal. So nodes like that, we want to do some extra checking to make sure, did this person really have massive switch of religious affiliation, or has the data been incorrectly combined? The other update that we've done on the data cleaning side is we have improved our internal team management, just the structure with which we organize our undergraduate workers to help keep us moving forward and to help us keep better track of the work that we're doing. So moving forward, we're facing a couple of different data cleaning challenges. The first is merging duplicates, like the example I've given you on the right, is very time consuming. It's not that challenging to flag the nodes that look suspicious, but actually going through and merging these things together takes a lot of work. So we're currently working through looking through these nodes that look suspicious, and we're hoping to release those in the future. It's just going to take us some time to clean that up. The next thing on the data side that we want to tackle is the same process of looking for duplicates, but with institutions. And this is a little bit trickier because there can be a wider variety in institutional names. And so it's just going to require a little bit more of a refined approach on our end. So something we're looking forward to doing in the future. And then the third challenge that we're looking to tackle moving forward is actually catching these duplicates when we're doing the data collection itself. So when we were first doing the initial collection for version 1 of the CHCD, there was no data already in the database. So we didn't have to worry about if we were collecting data about a person that we already knew about. But now that we already have over 30,000 individuals in our database, when we collect new data, we want to be aware of the data that we already have and start to try and merge things together in that collection process instead of the cleaning process. So what's the takeaway from all of these data cleaning stats? The thing to emphasize is that the CHCD is highly reliable for large scale research. So looking at really large trends, we're very confident that the database provides good data for that. And now that we've done more cleaning, the database is also more reliable for small scale research. As with any source, we duplicate the sources that we are using to collect the data from. And so as with any source, when you use the CHCD, do your homework, check our data, but we are confident that the data is becoming more and more clean as we go through versions here. So if we can go to the next slide. The last thing from the data side that we've updated is that you now have the ability to connect to the CHCD via API. And what this means is that instead of downloading the data and creating your own database locally, which you of course can still do, you are now able to remotely connect to our database and run queries directly. We just ask if this is a capability that you're interested in, that you contact our project team to set up an account, and we can get you going with that. So that's all the updates on the data backend. So I want to go ahead and pass it over to Alex, who's going to talk about the front end, which is the part of the project that most of you will be interacting with.
Yes, and just before we pass on to the front end, I just want to say a big thanks to Greta. All of these data kind of changes and updates and the cleaning has been really been led by her. She is eminently capable and has a background that deals with this, and we have been really thankful for her. So just thank you, Greta, for the hard work that you are doing. As she's also in a PhD program, so she is a capable team member that we're thankful for. So, but without further ado, let me go ahead and we'll talk about the front end. Now, just we will do a demo just so you can see what it looks like, but just to give us the idea of where we're going here. Some of the things that we fixed, we won't really talk much about. Those are just more like bug fixes, quality of life things. Something looked a little bit weird and we changed it around the display features, kind of tuning some of our search features and things like that. So just a few of those things have been happening in the background as well. But with 2.0, the largest kind of part of this update are around three kind of features. The first is around shareability. We wanted, with the first iteration of the database, we have created a React application. This is kind of an industry sort of standard application created by using a code language created actually by Facebook or Meta, whatever you'd like to call them. And this approach was great because it gives us all sorts of abilities, but it also didn't have the capabilities built in from the beginning to have customized URLs and things like that, where you could pass links to other people and they could see the exact same thing that you just searched. So we focused on shareability, so people could actually, share data and look and kind of upload links so people can view what they were viewing. We also have added the ability to download our data, at least in smaller chunks. So if you have looked up a certain thing, you want to then kind of do your own research on that data, you can download it now, various places throughout the site. And the biggest one is we've added a new view, a new way to explore the data through a more statistically descriptive statistical approach. So I think it's better, though, to actually see this stuff in action. So I'll change my screen here, and we will get going. From the front end, it looks the exact same, the same kind of landing page at data.chcdatabase.com. And so let's just explore, and you can see some of these things in action. So I'll head over to the search page, which is always a good place to start. And I think I'll look for Earlman. I'm looking for a Heinrich Earlman. He's an SVD, a father, and so he's part of this new data that we've been gifted by Monument to Serica. And we can see all over this kind of pop up all of his different informations, from institutional relationships to corporate relationships, the various information that we've collected on him, from notes to gender and nationality. And what you also see here is a few new buttons. The first is a permalink. So if you clicked this, it'll copy it to the clipboard, and I can go ahead and paste that in there. And if I pull this up, then we can see Heinrich Earlman, right? You're able to now share this with other people who can then kind of look at the same information. So you can say, hey, does this look right? Is this the person you're talking about or that you were looking for in your research? Here's a little information on them. You also have the ability here, because sometimes if you want to cite the information, it can be a little tough with digital sources. So we've created a button here that you can also cite this information to either say, good job, this is some great information, or to send it to us and say, hey, you need to fix this, and we will do our best to do it. So you can see here, there's a little bit of shareability going on, right, that allows this data to be shared more easily. You can also, though, as we look through here, you see a few more buttons, so some data download buttons. Now, you could download all the data on Heinrich Earlman, but you probably don't necessarily want to. Data on one individual is interesting. You can do a lot with it. But you might, for instance, if you're researching, say, the Society of the Divine Word, you could click through, and you could, say, get a list of all of the fathers associated with the Society of the Divine Word. It's a very long list, you can see here. But you could do this, and then you could click this little download button, and it will bring up a dialog here. You save it to your desktop and open it up, and then you will have a list of all of the various relationships of the fathers of the Divine Word. I need to mess with this a little bit, but it is ready to go for your own data crunching. So this sort of data download was a really big feature that we were hoping to get working for people, because we know that you might want to grab this data and use it for your own, right? And so we wanted to make that more possible for people, rather than just, control or like kind of grabbing and pasting like this, which never works it doesn't work all the time. So these download buttons are, I think, a really huge feature that lets us people access the data in a really much easier way. But this data download, though, it goes beyond just here. So if we go back to Heinrich Earlman, for instance, let's say we'll click a little button here to view a map. You can see where he's active around China. And what's interesting about this, right? We have download options here where I could download the data and actually pull up his geographical locations now. So if you want to do your own map, right, a customized map, pull this into a different sort of software program that gives you more capabilities than the rudimentary abilities here, you could do that. We could do Heinrich Earlman, we could do all the SPD fathers in Sichuan or various other, whatever sort of map you create, you can then download that data and edit it yourself. So it just makes it much more useful. So, you know, if you want to produce maybe something for a scholarly publication, you probably would like to go beyond just a screen capture on our interface. You can also here see citations. So you can actually cite this data. It's a little bit longer here because we have lots of filters making this map, but you can cite the page. And also this link. If I want to copy and paste this link, I can pop it into my URL, my browser URL box there, and you can share it with somebody else, and they can see a map of Heinrich Erlman. So it just adds a lot of usability here. Now, there's also, I mean, you can this download data. One more way that we can look at it is if we wanted to say look at a map or create a social network analysis. We have the capacity to do that, download that data as well. So if I go to Heinrich Erlman, I click through and see his network, you know, I can create a network map here of Heinrich Erlman, and I can go ahead and I can download all the node data and all the relationship data and create my own maps this way. So we really wanted to make it more useful for people so that they're able to access it in an easier way. And we believe the download buttons are going to do that. Now, this is the usability and the shareability features, but there is more going on beneath the hood of 2.0. So let's look at, say, one of the institutions that Erlman worked at, the SVD hospital in Jining. There's also another little button that you'll see here, which links us to the new data section of the website. And so if you click this button, we can pull up data on that institution. We can actually see over time the number of men, the number of women who are at that institution, how it changes over time. We can see things like the nationality makeup. We can see religious families, the SVD institution, so it's rather boring in terms of an illustration here. But we can see all kinds of information about this institution, how it has changed over time, from just basic counts to relationships. And we can, again, cite this information and link to it so other people can look at the institution you're looking at. These views, and there are several, these are really the product of our team working together, but also the students at Anderson University helped us kind of get a pilot version of this project, which enables us to kind of cut the data in lots of different ways. So let's say you're looking at Jining and you're wondering what else is going on in Jining. You can go ahead and actually go ahead and look for, we'll type Jining city. Probably scroll down here, it is. We'll look at the whole city. What's going on in Jining, where all of these SVD people are. And we can get a bigger view of what's happening, right? We can see gender over time, gender kind of overall counts of gender. We can see the various other people at work there. So we can see that there is a Society of the Divine Word, but we also have American Presbyterians and members of the Scandinavian Alliance Mission. We can see the breakdown of nationality in the location, and even what the kinds of institutions that are operating in the city, from churches to medical facilities to educational facilities. So it's a great way to, you know, try to get a glance of what's going, you know, what's happening on the ground in these places over time. And there's a million ways you could cut this data, but this is a great way, we believe, for maybe researchers or students to be able to dive in to really specific local areas and try to get a big picture view of what's happening. There's also, if you wanted to know more about, say, the Society of the Divine Word, we could click over here and maybe try to understand what they're doing, you know, more broadly. So we can pull up data on them, and we can see the various things that they're doing, from how many men they have over time. The gender doesn't change; it's a male congregation. So again, that's a pretty makes sense why there's a pink line at the very bottom at 0. But we can see the total number. We can see the breakdown of nationality of members of the organization. And we can also see highest areas of activity, from province to prefecture to county. We can actually get counts of, you know, where were these people active? What were the big places for them, right? And so we can see that they are they have a huge presence in Shandong, in Beijing and Henan, but they also have sizable presences in even Gansu, right? So you can begin to explore where they're active. So it's a great place for people to kind of to dive in and know, all right, where should I look if I'm looking to know what the Society of the Divine Word was doing? And we can cut this by province to prefectural level city to even counties to know, where were they most active? And we have a lot of people active in Yanzhou and Shandong. So makes sense. And again, you can even see all the institutions that we have in the database and how they're broken down by type, and how they grow over time. So we can see this gradual growth of SVD over time. So it's a feature we hope that's going to enable people to really begin exploring the data more, and also informing their own research of maybe, oh, I've been paying of what they've looked at and what they might have missed. Maybe you've been studying SVD and you've been looking at their medical missions, but you didn't realize how big their educational efforts were, right? Or vice versa. So this is the hope that this data will be able to help people understand on a bigger picture what they might be missing. And lastly, if you're just interested in the structure of the database itself, you could always go here and actually get counts for the entire database to see what's happening on a big scale within the database, from gender counts to the various religious traditions and religious families, to nationality over time and areas of activity. It's just a great way to look at the data and try to understand, okay, what is the shape of this CHCD? So maybe that one's more important for me, but you all might enjoy it as well as you try to parse the data and understand it and use it. So these are the major features that we have added for the database, and we're excited. We hope that people have this chance to dive in, to explore it more, and we believe this tool will help people do that more so and integrate it into their research process. So that is the demonstration of the new features of the database. So we'll head back to the presentation and we'll finish up by talking about where we'd like to go in the near future. So part of the things that we've learned as we've been pursuing 2.0 is, as Greta was kind of pointing out, that data maintenance is a big deal, right? That we want our data to be clean and useful and really reliable at every level, from the top, meta level, large scale analysis down to the granular individual level. So we are going to continue to clean our data, and we're making partnerships to actually do this in more programmatic ways that are reliable. So Greta is working with Notre Dame to develop a partnership with them where many students will help us clean data in a more efficient way. So we're excited to see another partner joining the team and making this data even richer. But beyond that, we realized sometimes with large scale data projects, we have this tendency to want to have bigger and bigger data sets, and you never release things in time. And so we've decided that we are going to adopt a different approach after 2.0, that we are going to have smaller data releases. As we finish with a corpus or a group, we are planning to release those in a much more compact size. So as we finish with one group, we'll go ahead and just do an update, and it might be 2.01. We're going to do this sort of approach where our data will change more rapidly, so it's more useful. And we're not going to be concerned so much about making sure we're adding tens of thousands each time. In terms of, that's the data side of what we're hoping to do, these smaller releases and cleaner data. On the front end, we have a few more things we'd like to fix, from bug fixing, smaller little changes we'd like to make as time goes on. And we also, the biggest one that we have left, the biggest hurdle, is some access issues in China that we've been hearing about, that the database is not always running well or accessible. And we don't believe that's any issue with firewalls or anything like that. We believe it's something we just need a technical issue that needs to be resolved. So we're hoping to take care of that in the near future, so that the people who this data matters the most for can also use it. So those are our kind of data and front-end goals. And I'm going to pass this over to Greta to kind of bring us out with what you can expect in these smaller releases that are forthcoming.
Thanks, Alex. It's really exciting to see all the new capabilities on the front end. We're really excited about those. So just to let you all know what data is coming next, as Alex said, we're going to start doing smaller releases, so that as soon as a set of data is cleaned, we're going to release it and make it available to you, rather than waiting for us to get lots and lots of things cleaned. So right here, you see the data that we are currently working on cleaning right now. We're working on cleaning information about 19th century Dominicans. We're also working on cleaning more information about the Franciscans and the Russian Orthodox churches. We're working through the Tianfeng source on Protestant Chinese church leaders, and then the Anderson Biographical Dictionary of Christian Mission. And again, as all of these sources are cleaned and ready, we will release them on their own. We'll also continue our work on the data cleaning that I mentioned earlier. So identifying those duplicates, identifying people whose data doesn't look quite right. And as those fixes become ready, we'll release those as well. So that concludes our presentation. I will go ahead and pass it off to Daryl.
Well, thank you both, Alex and Greta. Fantastic. It's exciting to see the development of this project and where it's at today. We're also very grateful for the questions that have already begun to come in. This is your chance to clarify anything that you've seen. If you would like to learn a little more, go deeper on a particular question, we invite you to do that. You have your chat button there at the bottom that you can press, and you can submit a question or a comment. If you prefer to raise it directly, if you hit your reactions button, you will see a place where you can hit raise hand, and that will move you to the front of the classroom, and I'll be able to call on you from there. But let me begin with a question that was posted earlier while you were speaking, Alex and Greta, and that is around what does someone do if they see something that needs to be corrected? In this case, someone had actually checked on their father and discovered that he's listed under two different names. There's some confusion about where exactly it was located. What does someone do next when they see something like that?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Actually, that is one feature we actually are hoping to add. It is a button to kind of comment, hey, I found some wrong data, could you, and report it more programmatically. So you can click a button and we can see the issue immediately. So that's something we're adding. So hopefully that will also be in one of these kind of smaller releases soon. However, for now, the best way to do that is to reach out to our team. You can reach out to me, to Daryl, to Greta, and you can find those links on our chcdatabase.com of how to email us. And just let us know what you would do. I think the best thing to do would be include the little CHCD ID that you can see in that kind of pop-up information and say, hey, this looks wrong for these reasons. And we will put it in our data cleaning log to basically say, okay, we'll take care of that. Thank you for clarifying your information. So it's very common with a lot of the data sources that we use to create this data. They're amazing for so many reasons, but they also, English names are very repeatable. And so it's very easy to merge people or keep them separate when they should be together. So any assistance in that is very appreciated. So please do reach out and let us know, and we'll log it.
Thank you. Here's another question. Someone has gone ahead and searched for some of the leading Chinese Protestants that many know, Ni Tuosheng, Watchman Nee, or Wang Mingdao, Jiao Yuming, and noticed that nothing came up immediately. Was something done wrong, or those not been added yet? Why would something like that perhaps not be there?
I think the first thing that I would say is there are some bugs right now with our Chinese language source or our Chinese language search. So if you're searching for these people by their Chinese name, our Chinese name search still needs to be tuned. So that could be the first problem. I don't know if Alex has more thoughts on that.
Sure. So a lot of these major leaders as well. This is something we're working on as we work through the Tianfeng source. We started with some easily accessible sources that are often coming from missionary sources and missionary denominations. People like Watchman Nee, kind of were these wonderful people who went between them, right? And so they're not always appearing in the sources as much as we'd want from these missionary perspectives. That's why we were using the Tianfeng source. So we're really hoping to add quite a lot. I don't know what the count is now, Greta, in terms of Chinese leaders. That this source is going to add them and add a lot of great information on them. So that is something we are hoping to address very, very soon. So they will be there soon. This is our dearest hope.
Great. Any other questions or concerns, comments? just a comment or observation about the 1950 date. Do you want to the cutoff? Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, so we kind of top our data off at 1950 to 1550. You know, beyond the fact that a nice 400-year period is nice. 1950, there's just so many changes taking place in the Chinese political system after that date. The church ecclesial system that we decide, you know, as far as a unit goes, it's a good place to stop. So our dates do tend to stop around there. There will be some missionary orders and various other sources have things that go beyond it. But in terms of like a lot of the sources that we're using, they kind of naturally end there anyway. And so that is the cutoff essentially. But you might be able to here and there find a few things that go beyond it, especially with some of these missionary orders.
A question about how Chinese people are incorporated into the database. Any differences? How does that work?
So
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No, you've been working on this more recently, so go ahead.
Okay. We record Chinese people just like we record someone from any other place in the world. I think there's some technicalities in terms of making sure that we list the names correctly. So making sure that we get all the alternate names we have, and that looks a little bit different in a Chinese setting where there are a lot of these different types of names. We try to record everything in traditional characters, just to keep everything unified, to keep us on the same system and make things more searchable. I think the largest challenge with incorporating Chinese people into our database is, as Alex mentioned before, a lot of the sources that we're working with are missionary sources and don't mention as many of these local leaders. So that's why we're focusing on a source like Tianfeng and looking for more of these sources moving forward, because we're only able to put people in the database who our sources mention.
Yes, and again to those sources, even when they include Chinese people, often we will have a romanization of their name, and that gives us, you know, very little to go on beyond, you know, their name is you know, Ti Chao. You know, that could be a lot of things in Chinese, right? So we have to leave it at that and hope maybe that could get filled in later. But maybe I see a kind of follow-up question with the Tianfeng source. Could you explain what that is, Greta, as people are working through it, or Daryl, whoever would like to answer?
Yeah, I'll probably work on that one. So Tianfeng was a Protestant magazine, Chinese magazine that was in wide circulation in the late 20th, mid 20th century, about the time we were working. And in particular, one thing that was very important is the issue that we're working at listed over 1,500 pastors who were, or other church leaders who were able to say that that they endorse the new government, the People's Republic of China sort of idea of a three-self church. So it's fantastic resource because we get names, locations, and their church affiliation. So it will be, it's a quick way to add a number of Chinese people. I'd also add that we've been working through Chinese church yearbooks that also list a lot of Chinese Protestant pastors. That begins in the 1920s, and we have through the late 1930s, I believe. We already have over 10,000 pastors or other church leaders from that of Chinese origin. It's just data cleaning. It's a lot of work to get that ready to actually go into the database so it's usable. So we are working on that. You will see more Chinese people appear in the coming months. I see there's also a question about plans for releasing more data about missions prior to 1840.
Yeah, this is a great question. One of the sources that you could see on that last slide was Anderson's Biographical Dictionary of Christian Mission. That's a source that we'll be using to kind of call from. The issue is with our approach from the database, we often take what we call a corpus approach. We will try to grab a large selection of documents which share a lot in common, right? From a run of a certain periodical or a book, right, that has been composed and it has sort of a limited kind of scope, so that we are able to kind of say, hey, this is a general picture of an area. The problem with pre-1840 missions is there's just not as many sources from that period that do that, right? That you're collecting data on all of these people and doing it in an organized way. Also, mission looks quite different in that period where people are doing things like, well, I'm part of a government kind of retinue to go visit China. And so mission looks a little bit different where it's not quite as easy to fit into the database. Although it just takes a bit more work for less people. And so we are working on that. Again, that's another one of these data projects. We've had some people who have been actually working on these sorts of things for quite a while. And so it's kind of a testament to how messy this period of mission is, especially for Protestants. For Catholics, however, we do have a good number of things pre-1840, especially now with the SVD being added, and we have a lot of Jesuit sources. And as we add Franciscans and Dominicans soon, which these are kind of in the final almost, I think we're moving right into the final stages of cleaning with them. We are going to have a lot of data there as well. So it's kind of it's a mixed bag depending on the group you're looking at of how easy they are to integrate into the database.
Great. A question has been raised about AI and its usability for some of the work that we're doing with this. Is there a way to utilize it for optimizing the data?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. ChatGPT was actually hugely helpful to me in the data cleaning process. So a lot of the data cleaning updates that you see were done with the assistance of ChatGPT. That being said, actually training an AI model with ChatGPT is challenging. You can use ChatGPT to ask it basic questions, but asking ChatGPT to clean data for you is behind a paywall. So we are interested in looking at AI. One of the issues that we're dealing with here is a lot of our data cleaning tasks are very specific to the source that we're dealing with. And if a source only has 800 people in it, and if it takes you how many hours to clean that by hand versus how many hours to build a model to clean that for you, it often ends up being faster to just clean it by hand rather than to build a model, because the models would have to be so specific to each source. So AI is definitely something that we have used and that we're trying to find ways to continue to creatively use it. But it's a balance of when is it saving us time and when is it actually going to take more time to do this with AI rather than to do it by ourselves.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And I think as we've done this more and more, I mean, AI has a lot of things that's going to be changing that, all environments, so to speak. But I've never believed in human power more than as we walk through these sources and the complex tasks you have to do to identify if this person's the same or different. And just training a model to do that for a very small data source is very complex and takes a long time. So at least in this point in time, all of our historical research skills are pretty safe, I would say.
Another question, sort of, I think the key essence of it is to talk a little bit more about publications. You mentioned, Greta, that this is a new node. What kind of information is that going to generate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we would, moving forward, if a source mentions that this person wrote a book or published an article, we now have the capability to code that in our database. I think, again, like Alex talked about, we tend to work on corpuses, like on an entire source altogether, rather than doing individual research on one person and their publications. So moving forward, we now have the ability to seek out sources that are going to talk specifically about publications, looking at maybe bibliographies of things published during a certain time or a list from a press of what books that they have published. So I think the opportunity for us moving forward is that we can now seek out sources specifically about publications, and that when a source does mention a publication, we can incorporate that.
And to that end, these publications, because they're so integrated into the database, I think we mentioned this, but the ability to morph our database and change it as our interests change, and as other people ask us, could we study this? This is a case in point for how we can do that quickly. Adding this new node type and collecting this new data, it took a little time, but not tons of time. But it has opened up tons of possibilities. Even working with other projects. I know the Chinese recorder has been indexed, I could say, to an extent. There's possibilities there for some large scale projects, and if we can find the right partners and the right amount of time and resources, we could create some very rich, complex data, right, where you can see how something like a conversation which is taking place in the Chinese recorder might be influenced by actually geographical proximity, amongst certain people, right? Maybe this is a conversation that's actually only important to certain parts of China, not all of China. And you can see that perhaps in the author, who's involved in the production of the periodical. So I think the sky's the limit. It's just really about the reality of what we can actually work with in terms of sources. But there's some really rich possibilities there for analysis.
Great. Here's a question that we regularly get, and that is there any collaboration between our database and other databases, like the China Christian Text Database or the China Biographical Database? What's possible? What are we doing?
So a lot of the tech updates that Alex described with creating citation links and permanent URLs weren't just for kind of the user experience, but also for our ability to connect with other databases. And so there really is a movement in digital humanities right now to kind of create data that can be linked to other databases, so that you can pull in data from other databases, or so that you could just kind of connect databases together. And so we've been doing a lot of work on our technical side to get us ready to connect with these other databases. So that's why we're so excited about a lot of the new technical updates from version 2 is we now have the technical capability to start exploring connecting with other databases in ways that our version 1 just didn't have.
Very well said. And in terms of collaboration with these projects, we have had a lot of partners with other projects and other, kind of groups. These ones specifically, we haven't, established formal partnerships with, but if people are willing and able and have the time to, we are always open. So I think it's something we definitely would like to pursue more now that we're actually capable of doing it, as Greta said.
And I would only add that on those two examples of databases, we actually have been in long conversations with both, and they've helped us shape some of the direction and decisions that we've been making in our technical upgrade. So there are hopes. Any final comments, questions? I have just posted in the chat the link for you to go and play with the new version that is now available to you. I encourage you to take advantage of that, perhaps bookmark it, come back to it, see what you can do. Discover the new graphs, the charts, the way to share what you're finding. We really do believe this is a much more powerful tool for users on the front end who can begin to manipulate the data in powerful ways and begin to see the picture of Christianity in China like never before. Thank you so much for your interest. It's been a delight to have you here today, to have the opportunity to share with you what we've been working on. We continue to value your feedback and your input. As Alex mentioned earlier, if you go to our website, the chcdatabase.com, all our contact information is there. We welcome any ideas, suggestions, potential partnerships. We're looking to keep this project moving. We believe in momentum, and let's keep with it together. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.